Greetings, salutations to Safe to Serve International and first-time viewers. Welcome to this midday power surge. I'm your host, Andrew Henriquez. Now today on this preparation day, I'm going to be addressing and also analyzing and publicly responding to the Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin, which has broken the internet. This interview has actually exposed the boogeyman. In passing, Vladimir Putin actually mentioned the boogeyman. Here he is.
Well, we have heard those boogeyman stories before. It is a boogeyman story.
All right. Not only has this interview exposed the boogeyman, which I'm going to be addressing, it also exposed the great PuppetMaster, which is popery. And we're going to be addressing that today. All over social media, on X and elsewhere, people are posting various clips of this interview. And they're rightly pointing out, yes, the elites, the globalists, those tyrants, but there's one organization that is overlooked. And today, I'm going to be exposing that scoundrel. Let's get right into this. This is actually the introduction of the interview with Carlson and Putin. Here he is.
The following is an interview with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, shot February 6, 2024 at about 7 p.m. in the building behind us, which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview...
Now, I covered some of this about 2 days ago on Midday Power Surge. And I want to re-emphasize one point and make a startling application. Putin is a part of the WEF. The WEF is a globalist organization, merchants and rulers of the earth, and their agenda is to control society, enslave the masses. You have heard of, welcome to 2030. You will own nothing. You'll be happy. Happy slaves. Here's Klaus Schwab.
This notion to integrate young leaders is part of the World Economic Forum since many years. And I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Notice now the connecting dots. The WEF, Klaus Schwab, is on the same team of the Pope of Rome. It's Team Popery, Team Jesuits. Here it is, friends. Prepare the future. The future is built by us. The Pope is saying the exact same thing. They're on the same bandwagon. Here's the point I'm going to drive home. Don't you miss it. There are many leaders of the nations who are connected to the WEF and by extension, Popery. Many of them will remain in Babylon, be a part of the enslaving of the people, and they will be lost. A few will break away from Babylon and join with God's commandment-keeping people and actually support liberty, freedom, liberty of conscience. And the question is, which group, which fate will Vladimir Putin have? This is a statement from the book Great Controversy, page 281, showing us that Popery will use kings and in turn enslave the kings by working upon the jealousy of the kings and the ruling classes. Rome had influenced them to keep the people in bondage, well knowing that the state would be thus weakened, and purposing by this means to fasten both rulers and people in her thrall. Let's get back to the interview. In that interview, Vladimir Putin says, I don't know who was behind the collapse of the former Soviet Union. Here he is.
We're coming to the point where the Soviet Ukraine was established. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and everything that Russia had generously bestowed on Ukraine was dragged away by the latter. I'm coming to a very important point of today's agenda.
Thank you.
After all, the collapse of the Soviet Union was effectively initiated by the Russian leadership. I do not understand what the Russian leadership was guided by at the time, but I suspect there were several reasons to think everything would be fine.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know why the Russian leadership actually made policies for the overthrow, the collapse of the Soviet Union. Well, let's tell Vladimir Putin who was behind the collapse of the former Soviet Union. And I'm going to allow the leader of the USSR to actually state who was the puppet master, the instigator. My friends, listen to me attentively. I've been covering over and over again frequently, ad nauseum, the prophecy of Daniel chapter 11, verse 40 and verse 41. This interview is giving us evidences for the fulfillment of those two verses of Daniel 11. So who was behind the overthrow of the Soviet Union? It was Popery. Watch this, clip one.
It's one of the least known stories of the 20th century, how President Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II worked together to bring down communism and end the Cold War. It's a story now told in a new documentary film called The Divine Plan. In the spring of 1981, assassins shot both President Reagan and Pope John Paul II, just 6 weeks apart. Both men nearly died.
Clip two.
The New York Times.
They both said to one another, this Protestant president and obviously Catholic Pope, they said to one another that they believed that God had spared their lives because they should have bled to death. They both should have died.
While the Pope and President had admired one another from afar, the assassination attempts drew them together. When meeting for the first time at the Vatican the following year, they confided in each other their belief God had spared their lives for a reason. That reason? To defeat communism. In private, Reagan put a name on it, the Divine Plan, or the DP.
And
you see, nothing is happened by accident. It's a fulfillment of prophecy. Clip three. Watch this, friends. It says, John Paul II and President Ronald Reagan were a match made in heaven. I'm not sure which heaven that was, but look at this. Here are the words from Mikhail Gorbachev. CNN News, headline, Mikhail Gorbachev once said, the collapse of the Iron Curtain would have been impossible without John Paul II. Vladimir Putin, that's your answer. Behind the scenes was actually the Pope of Rome. Behind the scenes is the Jesuits, the Black Pope, the Jesuit Superior General. All right, let's get back to this. This is George Herbert Bush calling for a new world order in the context of wars. Watch.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order where diverse nations are drawn together in
New World Order. And we have the present president actually calling for the New World Order. In what context? Look at the blue words. The war with Russia and the Ukraine. All right. We don't make things up here, friends. It's well documented, empirical facts. And notice now, Biden says he and the Pope are on the same page. Listen.
Yes, we spoke with Pope Francis by phone.
Wait a minute. Another match in heaven?
Yes, we spoke with Pope Francis by phone yesterday.
I did.
How did that conversation impact you? What did you take away from that conversation with Pope Francis?
Well, that's just one question. The Pope and I are on the same page. He was very, very interested in what we were doing to deal with some of the crises that we're facing, particularly in Israel this time around. And I laid out to him what the game plan was, how we thought we should.
All right, friends, I want to be very clear in this point. Those of you who understand end time prophecy, you will realize that Gorbachev didn't say it was America. He says the Pope was instrumental. It would have been impossible for the collapse of the Soviet Union without John Paul II. John Paul II oversees a church organization, so-called church, I must say. All right? The Vatican, understand this. The Vatican is represented as a church controlling state. Church is a woman in end-time prophecy. This is Jezebel taking the land and giving it to Ahab in 1 Kings 20 and 1 Kings 21, Naboth vineyard. And what happened after 1989, the collapse of the former Soviet Union, the United States of America became the sole superpower. That's a fulfillment of Daniel chapter 11, verse 40 and verse 41. We're living in a time of a spiritual war, even though we see political wranglings and fightings. In this interview with Carlson and Putin, there was a particular word and phrase that was frequently stated. What was that? It was CIA. Whenever you have a song, let's say a hymn, and there is a chorus, it doesn't matter how many stanzas that song has. It's the chorus that keeps on reminding you what the song is all about. So if I were to simmer down this interview, what was exposed? The CIA is actually the boogeyman behind the scenes. Clip 1. Here is the interview. Come off my screen. Here it is.
We waited and waited for some response. There was no reply. I said to the FSB director, write to the CIA, what is the result of the conversation with President? He wrote once, twice, and then we got a reply. We have the answer in the archive. The CIA replied, we have been working with the opposition in Russia. We believe that this is the right thing to do, and we will keep on doing it. Just ridiculous. Well, okay. We realized that it was out of the question.
Forces in opposition to you. So you're saying the CIA is trying to overthrow your government?
Mercy. What? The CIA was attempting to overthrow their government. Those of you in the chat, I need you to number how many times in this interview CIA was mentioned between them both, Putin and Carlson. How many times CIA was mentioned? I just gave it number 1, the first time. Let's get back. CIA attempted to overthrow the government. Look at clip number 2. Putin said the CIA runs the show in America, and that in essence, presidents are mere puppets on a string. Watch this.
So twice you've described U.S. presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected in your telling.
That's right. That's right. In the end, they just told us to get lost. I'm not going to tell you the details because I think it's incorrect. After all, it was confidential conversation.
Friends, you can go on Twitter X afterward. You can look at various platforms right now. People are posting these clips from the interview, and they're highlighting CIA, CIA, CIA behind the scenes. Listen to me attentively. Do you know what you will not see? Who runs the CIA? And that's where we come in. Safe to Serve, Prophesy Again TV platform. This is where we come in. We have the missing link. You can look at many who are sincere. Apparently, some people say Alex Jones is sincere. Musk sincere, Elon. That's what many are saying. And they're pointing out this organization. What does CIA represent? What is its nickname, alias? Who runs it? Look at this right here, friends. Look at this. It says, why Catholics thrive in the CIA. So much so, it has earned itself nicknames like Catholic Intelligence Agency and Catholics in Action. Why? The majority of the leaders of the CIA are actually Roman Catholics. It's there. And they're growing more influential and more powerful. They are the movers and shakers of policies in America. Wall Street, the CIA are the boogeyman. You see that, my friends? The Tablet is a world-renowned prominent newspaper. Look it up. The Tablet. CIA, the boogeyman of revolutionary Latin American governments. Their hands have been behind upheavals, riots, bloodshed. Look at this right here. It states under the Obama administration, I'll come back to Obama later on, the waterboarding techniques against terrorists used by the CIA actually was derived from the Spanish Inquisition. So friends, connect the dots. You have CIA using these interrogation processes. Waterboarding is one of them. It came from where? The Spanish Inquisition. Spanish what? Look at this right here. And who was behind the Spanish Inquisition? The Roman Catholic Church. That's where we come in. That's the nail in their coffin. Lower the coffin, 6 feet deep. That's it. And the Inquisition that belongs to the Roman Catholic Church also controlled the media. No wonder they had an uproar when Carlson went to interview Putin. And that board is now called the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, which is still intact. All right. Let's get back to the Bible. In Revelation 18, the Bible speaks of popery, guilty of the murders, the crimes, the wars, the genocide, depopulation in the land. Babylon is instrumental. Pastor, Babylon, but you were talking about CIA and the Roman Catholic Pope and the Jesuits. Babylon? What's the connection here? Look at the screen. Revelation 17, verse 3 through verse 6. Babylon is called the mother of harlots, the abomination of the earth. She is guilty of the blood of saints, the blood of martyrs. There it is. And who calls themselves the mother church, Roman Catholicism? It's clear. Guilty. And she makes the merchants rich by creating wars. And the merchants can now sell their arms, tanks, planes, nuclear ammunitions. Yes. And the purpose of Jesuits and popery is to overthrow nations, change policy of nations, to bring about popery back to prominence. All right, here comes Putin. Listen what he says again. If you want to stop the wars, then stop funding the weapons, America. Hear what he says.
I will tell you what we are saying on this matter and what we are conveying to the US leadership. If you really want to stop fighting, you need to stop supplying weapons. It will be over within a few weeks. That's it. And then we can agree on some terms.
So who is America working through to supply weapons to fight their so-called wars, to bring about the new world order, which is linked to the mark of the beast? Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually the CIA. Watch this. Here it is. This is going back to the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union. Through whom did America work? Through whom did the Vatican work? It's right there. CIA. What a connection. It's there. And this led to the greatest secret alliances of all time, which hastened the dissolution of the communist empire, a clandestine campaign, secrecy. So who is the great puppet master behind the scenes? All right, come back here. This is, now, I must make a qualification. I'm not saying that Putin is actually innocent in all of this. Whatever he's going to say, of course, is going to make his government look good. We get that. But don't you overlook the actual gems that are being scattered all over in the interview. Putin went on to say, I'm going to expose someone by the name of Gates and the CIA. And he actually said, Gates, CIA are the ones behind the wars, the political upheavals. Listen to Putin. Hear what he says.
It's easy to find out on the internet. When I was in the USA at the invitation of a Bush senior, it is even easier to learn from someone I'm going to tell you about. I was told it was very interesting. I said, just imagine if we could tackle such a global strategic security challenge together. The world will change. We'll probably have disputes, probably economic and even political ones, but we could drastically change the situation in the world. He says yes, and asks, are you serious? I said, of course. We need to think about it, I'm told. I said, go ahead, please. Then Secretary of Defense Gates, former director of CIA, and Secretary of State Rice came in here, in this cabinet, right here at this table. They sat on this table. Me, the foreign minister, the Russian defense minister on that side. They said to me, yes, we have thought about it. We agree. I said, thank God, great. But with some exceptions.
So twice you've described U.S. presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected in your telling.
That's right. That's right. In the end, they just...
Now, why would Putin say Gates, defense secretary, former CIA? He didn't have to mention he was former CIA. Did he have to do that? No. Why would he make that statement? Look at your screen now, friends. There he is, Robert Gates. You need to understand this. He was actually nominated by a Republican president, George W. Bush. It's right there. He served under a Democrat president, Obama. Two wings of the same bird. Let's move on. Where was he educated? Robert Gates. Where? Georgetown University. Ding, ding. Let the bells ring. Georgetown is a Jesuit institution. He's Jesuit trained, Jesuit educated. The CIA, Jesuits. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the so-called Society of Jesus, it has nothing to do with the biblical Jesus. Nothing. It's the Antichrist power. And what is the purpose of Jesuitism? To overthrow Protestantism, overthrow freedom and liberties, and to reinstitute popery to her global dominance that she once had between 538 and 1798. These are the gems from the actual interview. And once they create wars, the Jesuits, CIA, manufacturing wars, the Pope can now stand up and say, stop the bombing, release the hostages, peace, peace. But by peace, would the Pope destroy many? Claiming to be the chaplain of the UN, that's the Pope. claiming to be the world's pastor. Deception, let no man deceive you. The Pope is calling for the new world order. That's it. He is the prominent moral authority in the world. You know what? Let's hear this from the horse's mouth. Obama. Obama speaks about Georgetown University. Robert Gates, CIA. Listen what he says about Jesuit principles. America and the world benefit from Jesuit principles.
Hello, Georgetown. As your neighbor, I thought I'd say hello and congratulate you on the 200th anniversary of your charter. A lot's happened in Washington over 2 centuries, and Hoyas have always been at the center of the action. Georgetown graduates have gone on to serve as president of this country and other countries, as members of Congress, and even as basketball-crazed senior advisors working down the hall from me in the West Wing. Over the years, you've welcomed countless international students, just as Georgetown students are known for serving all over the world. Your graduates crowd the ranks of Peace Corps volunteers. Simply put, this country and this world benefit from your commitment to Jesuit principles, to being men and women for others. Here's to the next 200 years.
Mercy.
Happy birthday, and Hoya Saxa.
Every time in the Bible, when there was a birthday celebration, somebody was beheaded. Pharaoh's birthday, Herod's birthday, John the Baptist was beheaded. Does Obama not know the history of Jesuitism? Jesuitism linked to popery, Roman Catholicism, and the Bible likens popery unto a leopard-like beast in Revelation 13, verse 1 and verse 2. And the leopard is significantly an animal that will not change and cannot change the spots of his skin. Jeremiah 13, verse 20 through verse 23. Jesuits of the past is Jesuit today. They're only operating under a camouflage. The man said, presidents have come through Georgetown. Politicians have come through Georgetown. In other words, when you go to the polls and you vote for this politician, that president, who's really steering the ship in America? Did you vote for the Pope? Did you vote for the Black Pope? The Jesuits? They are the ones in charge. Here comes. In the interview, I wonder how Tucker Carlson felt when Putin said to him, you, Tucker Carlson, was trying to join the CIA. That came out in the interview. Listen to this.
With the backing of whom?
With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it is a serious organization. I understand.
It's a what organization? So the question must be asked, is Tucker Carlson ignorant? Or is he control opposition? Time will tell. I still respect his work. If he did not do this interview, we would have all these gems on the table, showing us the secrets behind the scenes, so we can apply them to end-time prophecy. Awaken people by giving them the missing links. So we need each other in spirit and in truth. I remember an interview he just did recently, Carlson, and he testified, all these things I'm not promoting, I did not believe before 2016. In actuality, he said, 2016 was his wake-up call. And he began to search. He received his enlightenment, his awakening. Is he fully there? No, like many of us. But it appears he's on the right track. And just like Martin Luther, the reformer, was instrumental to provide the missing links to those princes in Germany that sparked the Protestant Reformation, or rekindled it with Luther. Both were important to form, I call it, the quote-unquote dream team. Yes. So how many times have they mentioned CIA in this interview? How many times? Notice now. In the interview was asked, who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline? What do you think the response was from Putin? The chorus, listen.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
You for sure.
I was busy that day. Nate, do you have I did not blow up Nord Stream. Thank you, though.
У вас лично, может быть, есть алиби, у вас лично.
You personally may have an alibi, but the CIA has no such alibi.
Do you have evidence that NATO or the CIA did it?
How many clips so far? Friends, and
You
that's
know,
why we...
I won't get into details, but people always say in such cases, look for someone who is interested. But in this case, we should not only look for someone who is interested, but also for someone who has capabilities. Because there may be many people interested, but not all of them are capable of sinking to the bottom of the Baltic Sea and carrying out this explosion. These two components should be connected. Who is interested and who is capable.
That's it. Just as we're told in the book Great Controversy, page 589, the Jesuits, papists, they are the ones that create crises to bring about their so-called solution. It's called the Hegelian dialectic. Now, Putin went on to state, the US controls the world's media. As a result, they can promote global propaganda to deceive the masses. Here it is. So, my friends, that's why they hate independent media. That's why there was such a loud outcry. Carlson, don't go to Russia to interview Putin. They're afraid of what would come out in the interview. Here it is.
But I'm confused. I mean, that's the biggest act of industrial terrorism ever, and it's the largest emission of CO2 in history. Okay, so if you had evidence, and presumably given your security services, your intel services, you would, that NATO, the US, CIA, the West did this, why wouldn't you present it and win a propaganda victory?
In the war of propaganda, it is very difficult to defeat the United States, because the United States controls all the world's media and many European media. The ultimate beneficiary of the biggest European media are American financial institutions. Don't you know that?
Whoa, don't you know that? He's dropping gems as if he's saying, Carlson, I'm seasoned in this. Let me educate you. It's the merchants and America. That's where Putin stopped because he can't go any further. But we have the missing links. Who controls the merchants of the earth? Who? And the kings of the earth. Revelation 17, verse 18 is the harlot, Babylon, popery. We call that media of the beast, which will lead to the mark of the beast, M-O-B. We call it, one more, tentacles, one more, merchants of the beast. And Putin went on to state, presidents may come and go, but presidents cannot change the course America is on because the elites are the ones in charge, not president. So why should you vote? Presidents here are not elected, my friends. They are selected. Listen and wise up. Past that. Listen.
You just asked me if another leader comes and changes something. It is not about the leader. It is not about the personality of a particular person. I had a very good relationship with, say, Bush. I know that in the United States, he was portrayed as some kind of a country boy who does not understand much.
George Bush.
I assure you that this is not the case. I think he made a lot of mistakes with regard to Russia, too. I told you about 2008 and the decision in Bucharest to open the NATO's doors for Ukraine and so on. That happened during his presidency. He actually exercised pressure on the Europeans. But in general, on a personal human level, I had a very good relationship with him. He was no worse than any other American or Russian or European politician.
Trump.
I assure you, he understood what he was doing as well as others. I had such personal relationship with Trump as well.
Yes.
It is not about the personality of the leader. It is about the elite's mindset.
The elites.
If the idea of domination at any cost, based also on forceful actions, dominates the American society, nothing will change.
So who controls the president's Revelation 17 verse 18? And that's why I appreciate the works of Carlson. I quote frequently from his research, investigative journalism. Yes. Remember, he just got enlightened, awakened, like many others, like many of us. Listen to this now. He goes on to state, John Kerry made the same statement. Here is John Kerry. And John Kerry says, it doesn't matter who the president is. The merchants are the ones in charge. The Pope is the one in charge. Watch this. John Kerry.
You know, it's absolutely critical that we accelerate. I am convinced beyond any doubt that because of the decisions being made in the marketplace now, because, I mean, you know as well as I do, even if, you know, I don't want this, obviously, but if you wound up with a different president who was opposed to climate crisis, I got news for you. No one politician anywhere in the world can undo what is happening now. The marketplace is doing this.
The merchants. And why would he scratch his nose? When you scratch your nose, generally speaking, you are telling a lie. You're being deceptive. Now, I won't play the second clip to confirm the same thing he said in a different setting, different interview. Have no time for that. Let's now go to the Pope, John Kerry. Listen what he says. Come off my screen. Here he is now. Who does he bow to and revere?
You're on a very important mission here to Europe. Can you tell us why is it important to include a visit with the Pope during your visit to Europe to talk about climate change?
Well, the Pope is one of the great voices of reason and compelling moral authority on the subject of the climate crisis. He's been ahead of the curve. He's been a leader. His encyclical Laudato Si is really a very, very powerful document, eloquent and...
Enough. And Laudato Si is calling for Sunday worship by law to solve the world's problems. So we see the connecting links. Putin went on to say, what's happening is the CIA launching a civil war. And this is how the interview ended. Why would God, providentially, right, allow the interview to end by saying CIA and civil war? Why? Think, why would that be the closing statement? Watch this. How many times have the word CIA been used so far? Give me that number.
You're on a very...
Listen.
What is happening is, to a certain extent, an element of a civil war. Everyone in the West thinks that the Russian people have been split by hostilities forever. No, they will be reunited. The unity is still there. Why are the Ukrainian authorities dismantling the Ukrainian Orthodox Church? Because it brings together not only the territory, it brings together our souls. No one will be able to separate the soul. Shall we end here, or is there anything else?
No, I think that's great. Thank you, Mr. President.
So who's behind this civil war? He mentioned before, the CIA. That's clip one. That's how they close the actual interview. Now watch the word coup. CIA and coup. Watch this now. Listen.
Then why the coup? Why the victims?
Did you hear that? Civil war and coup. One more time.
Then why the coup? Why the victims? Why threatening Crimea? Why launching an operation in Donbass? This I do not understand. That is exactly what the miscalculation is. CIA did its job to complete the coup.
That's the nail in their coffin. My friends, first-time viewers, watch this. Have you heard of the predictive programming in the movie Leave the World Behind? What was the last scene of that movie about? 3-stage maneuver to topple a country's government from within. You can read the first 2 stages, but what's the last stage? Coup d'etat, a coup. Civil war, a collapse. Why would God allow the interview to end on that point? CIA, coup, civil war, collapse. And what is coming? What is going to be rolled out in 2024? Another movie. Many are saying it's predictive programming. A civil war. Let me give you the first clip. Watch this. By the way, it mentioned the 3rd-term president in America. You can't have that unless you have martial law. Watch this.
19 states have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The 3rd-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
It's too clear for people not to see it. Friends, I didn't sleep last night. Prayed over this, poured over this. Clip 2. Notice how they mention Texas and California. What's happening now in Texas? Watch this.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California.
And notice, listen to me, let's come right back to CIA now. Who is overseeing the border crisis in Texas? It is none other than DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. So what, Pastor? So what? Do you know the man went to a Jesuit institution?
Our southern border.
This is Congressman Higgins.
Our southern border, under the control of Secretary Mayorkas, is 1,954 miles of failure.
Enough. I won't spend much time on that. Here he is, Mayorkas, DHS, Secretary. And notice where he received his education. It's right there, friends. From Loyola Law School. Loyola? A Jesuit-run institution. It goes right back to the PuppetMaster, the Black Pope. Jesuitism, even Pope Francis, the first public Jesuit Pope. I'm going to close right here. No wonder they tried their very best to publicly shame and embarrass Tucker Carlson. They even said, breaking news, EU, European Union, wants to sanction Tucker Carlson. What? Sanction him? By the way, he is an American. What? So where is his national sovereignty? It's in a crisis you actually see what draconian laws are already on the books. Imagine when God's people begin the loud cry message. Will the whole world sanction us? Is that what's coming? To fulfill Matthew 24, verse 3 through verse 9? Look at this. Musk, that's Elon Musk, condemns idea of banning Carlson from coming back to America if he should interview Putin. What? Do you know what I see here? They want to control even your movements, your travel. We just saw that in the pandemic. COVID-19. They could control your travel. Imagine when the mark of the beast is rolled out. Do we not see we're in a crisis? They were even trying, the legacy media, let us lambast, castigate publicly. Mr. Carlson, it's going to come upon God's people. We won't be able to carry forward the true principles of the gospel, which points to Christ, victory over sin, and to expose the rulers of the darkness of this world. That's Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 through verse 18. Put on the whole armor of God. Great Controversy, page 607 says, they will put forth almost superhuman effort to shut away the light. And that's what they did to Mr. Carlson. That's what they would do to us. I'm going to close with this point. I believe one reason they are allowing, you know what? I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that. I want that point to stand out clearly and not to be hidden in 46 minutes of dialogue. All right, friends? And that's why Mr. Carlson is now viewed as their champion. He wants to give people truth. That's why he's viewed as their champion. Where are God's champions? Where are they? And I believe this man is now being awakened. I believe it. He has steps to go. We have his missing links. We must give it to him. And by God's grace, in spirit and in truth, unite to overthrow the powers of darkness, to rescue souls from Babylon. Where are God's champions today? Where are they? Who is addressing these issues? And while I say this of Carlson and others, a few others, I quote frequently from, remember, don't put your trust in men. Men will deceive you. If you simply put your trust in men, hook, line, and sinker, when they go left of the track, you will not discern it because you're not following the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. You're following men. In closing, just before Christ was crucified, he exposed the betrayer. And the disciples did not recognize who he was because he was saying, I care for the poor. I am against oppressors and oppression. But Judas was the betrayer. Is that clear? And that's why we have to expose popery, because he claims to be for peace. He claims to be for the poor. Let us be about our Father's business. All platforms we're streaming on are in the description. Put the number of times CIA is mentioned in this dialogue, all right? This soliloquy, I should say, and give me the one point that stood out to you in this presentation. I will see you tomorrow, beginning at 10 a.m., streaming live, Eastern Time, live on this platform. God bless. And remember, the protest continues.